Well, good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Jeff Elevado with the City of Bremerton, and with me here is Bremerton Mayor Greg Wheeler. Today, we'd like to share with you our proposal to finish the master plan elements of Pendergast Regional Park. Mayor, any lead-in you'd like to share?
We just appreciate the opportunity to address you tonight, and I look forward to partnering with you when we get this park up and running.
Thank you, Mayor. So Pendergast Regional Park is a 50.3 acre athletic complex located in West Bremerton, kind of up behind Auto Center Way. We're adjacent to the Kitsap County Department of Emergency Management Readiness Center up there where the armory is. This location is adjacent to Highway 3, and the property was acquired from Bremerton Public Works by the Parks Department, so we own this property outright. In the early 90s, a concept was brought to the community to develop a large athletic complex on this site. And as you can see from the outlined area, there was a portion of that completed. The original concept was to have 6 softball, baseball fields, 2 soccer fields, all the parking, restroom, RV parking, lots of other elements to the complex. As these projects go over time, the budget continued to grow and grow. So the original concept was pared down to just the outlined area, and only that portion of the element of this project was completed in 1995. That project was about $2.5 million, and it completed the 3 softball fields. What you see here, these are adult and youth fields, 300-foot fences, skinned infield grass, natural grass outfields, complete with lighting, spectator seating. We use these fields for all of our league play and tournaments, both youth and adult tournaments. In addition to the softball fields, the parking lot you see here was built 470 stalls. It's all asphalted. You can see that we're having some challenges with the asphalt now, which we'll discuss later as we talk about project scope. Here you see the concession stand building area. This concession stand consists of a full licensed kitchen. It's got the 3 bay sinks, so it can be a commercial kitchen. It also has meeting rooms, mechanical rooms, and houses the full restroom component, which actually has changing areas too. So it's a larger restroom with multiple stalls for bigger tournaments and larger team groups. Also included were 2 sand volleyball fields, a children's play area, and then as you see up in the picture, a basketball court. It's a full court asphalt basketball court. And then down at the bottom of the picture, you'll see 2 full-size, all-weather fields with lighting and curbing. It's got concrete curbing around the dirt field. All weather, yeah. That means that if it's not raining, you can play on them. Other elements of the soccer field area, it's a substandard restroom. This is called a ROM Tech. It's essentially a glorified Santa can. It's not hooked up to sewer. It has to be pumped frequently, not ADA accessible. We also have no ADA access to the fields. They're sloped to get in, no accessible pathways. And then the playability and the drainage on these all-weather fields is poor. Some recent improvements we've done at Pendergast Park. Here you see the city's only off-leash dog park. You can see the outline of the top 3 fields is kind of mirrored in the bottom, and those are the 3 fields that weren't built. And we put other things in those fields, and one of them was this dog park. In 2017, we received a grant to upgrade the dog park and included a new bullpen, some water access, You can see this kiosk was a Boy Scout project, turned out really nice. And then we also provided a small dog and a big dog separation. For some reason, those guys don't get along too well. A private-public partnership that we have out at Pendergast is the two large buildings you see here. Back in 2001, the city was approached by a private company to build an indoor soccer center. Olympic Soccer and Sports Center was the original name of this complex. They entered into a ground use lease from the city. So the city still owns the property, but the private company owns the building and the amenities here. Later, they, in 2006, they built the second, you see the darker green roof, built the second building on. So the original building had one full-size adult field, one smaller youth field, and then 2007, when they built onto the second building, they added an additional adult full-size field. So now you have two full-size adult fields and one youth field, all indoor. You can see the mezzanine. They have a small cafe. Really nice facility. So in Parks and Recreation, we developed things called a Park Recreation and Open Space Plan. This is our comprehensive plan that we use to develop capital improvements and project improvements over time. These plans last for 6 years, and they're state mandated to have updates every 6 years. In 2014, when we adopted our PROS plan referencing Pendergast Park, you can see the arrowed items were things that were identified as needs. The first need was development of additional softball fields. Secondly was to develop all-weather synthetic turf soccer fields. Third one was develop additional path parkways. Also upgrade restroom adjacent to the soccer fields. And then in this plan, the original thought was to seal coat the asphalt parking lot. We had a contractor come out and look at it and said it's beyond seal coating. You need to overlay it. So later we'll talk about the scope of overlaying the parking lot. And then repair the exterior of the concession and restroom building. The significance for us to identify these items in a comprehensive plan is that when we apply for state and regional grants, they in order for us to score well, we have to have it identified in a plan. They want to see that it's been thought out and that there's placeholders in your capital improvement plan over time. So we always try to get these things as improvement items, and this is one that's been in for quite some time. And as we go through our PROS plan update for this year and next, we'll still continue to put these improvement items in here. So these are the things we identified that we'd like to do. Phase 1 was completed in '95. The city was not able to complete the other phases of the project that could address these items. So we were approached by several nonprofit groups, youth groups, to say, hey, why don't you turf those soccer fields? We could get a lot more use out of them. It would allow us to play different seasons. We wouldn't have to worry about rain out so frequently. And they actually said, well, we'll come to the fields and operate them for you if the city funds the improvements. At the time, we didn't have the ability to do that. So we've worked with the mayor and other folks and tried to come up with some funds to do this improvement. Initial request for the city was to bond it. Our bond rating very high, but we had other projects in the mix, so we weren't able to bond out and get funding to do that. Limited grant opportunities on this particular site also limit our ability to get additional funding to build it out completely. And that's one of the reasons why we're here, is looking for partners to fund this great project. This is another conceptual view of what the field might look like once they're turfed. There's a really big demand, high demand for high quality, all weather, all season playing fields. You can extend your athletic leagues, you can extend your playing time, and as Ms. Schmidt mentioned earlier in her statement about fairgrounds, rainouts are really detrimental to tournament play. They're even detrimental to league play. One of the things we deal with is you get a rainout and typically it's called really late, so the teams have been on the field while it's raining. you just lost a couple of days. So then you have recovery time and on and on and on. And what we're finding with these turf fields is that we do need to give them, natural turf fields, give them time to recover. So the seasons kind of get cut short. And as grass grows and there's a dormant period for grass, we're not able to play on those fields during that time frame because the grass doesn't repair itself. Turf field gives us an opportunity to do that. Tournament play will certainly increase with turfing of fields. Rain or shine, you can pretty much play on them. So it really gives us a lot of opportunity. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the scope of this project. As I mentioned, phase 1 was completed in 1995. 2.5 million was invested in that. One of the things that we like to stress is that existing infrastructure in today's dollars is almost worth $5 million. So you figure 1995 dollars versus 2018 dollars, we're looking at about $5 million worth of infrastructure. And that includes all the things we just discussed, and all the infrastructure's in place. So all the lighting's in place, all the parking, curbing, restrooms, plumbing, utilities. So there'd be very little for us to do to expand these other amenities. All we would need to do is connect. And we own the property, so there's no acquisition costs involved. If you look at phase 2, the priorities for phase 2 are artificial turfing the 2 soccer fields, restroom and maintenance facility improvements, concession building renovation, new playground, accessible playground, and climbing wall. The climbing wall is an interesting discussion. We were approached at the last part of 2018 from the Mountaineer Club of Kitsap County. They had come into some money and they're looking for a location to build a climbing wall that they can train and teach classes out of, and they felt that Pendergast was a perfect location for that. So that's an element that they're bringing to this mix, and they already have the funding to build it. So we're excited about that. Accessibility is always a key thing for us with playgrounds now. If you're aware of our Evergreen Park playground, it was the first accessible playground in Kitsap County. Turfed, fall surface for easy wheelchair movement. It's one of the most popular playgrounds around the area. So we would want to build an accessible playground out at Pendergast to kind of match that. Currently, there's no picnic shelters out at the site. Picnic shelters, site furnishings, and landscaping would be another element in phase 2. And then we always add in architectural and engineering costs, permitting, and then project administration. And then our pattern with bigger projects is to then build a contingency in, because they never cost what they say they're going to cost when you start looking at them. There's always extras. And all these estimates have been based on either straight direct quotes from, like for the turf, we got quotes from our vendors. And also our knowledge of doing projects like this and escalating that for inflation. So total package for phase 2 is about $5.8 million. That's what we're looking at for these elements. So phase 3 of the proposal is to add 1 additional softball field. What we found with tournament play is 3 fields is great, 4 fields is better. You can run a 16, 18, 22 team tournament pretty easily on 3 fields, but when you get 4 fields, you can get up to 48 team, and we would combine this with our Lions Field complex, which has 2 fields, and we can really get some play in. So artificially turf the 3 softball fields and add 1 additional field. Because the dog park is currently located on where we would put the 4th field, we would have to relocate that dog park in another location, and then A&E, permitting, project admin, and contingency. Total for this phase 3 would be $6.7 million, with a total project for both phase 2 and 3 of $12.5 million. So one of the things I know that the district stresses is the economic impact of projects that they consider. And one of the things that Mayor Wheeler did early on is he convinced us that it's important to look at economic impact and see how that affects our ability to run these projects. So to his his direction to me was go out and get us an economic impact study. So we did that. We contracted with Burke Consulting of Seattle, and they provided us an impact study that showed what kind of economic impact this project, if completed, would show. So we just received this final report, so you wouldn't have seen this in our last presentation that we gave you. So this is additional information. So whenever they do an analysis, the first thing they look at is the market. What else is out there? What other things would we be competing a bit against? Or what other things could we work in tandem with to develop bigger regional events? What you see here is the fact that these year-round facilities really do make a difference in a community. Again, speaking to Ms. Schmidt, she mentioned that a lot of the tournaments had moved down to Lacey. Well, that Lacey, they call it Thurston County Recreation and Athletic Center. That thing does great numbers, but it's a $25 million project. It's got multiple turf fields. I know tons of kids that play on teams that go down there, and they play every weekend. So there's 5 turf softball, baseball fields, and they just run tournaments like crazy. So it is important,
Who owns or runs that?
It's the county. It's Lacey Thurston County.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a partnership between private and public funding.
It helps that it's really close to I-5 too.
Very close, yeah. Yeah. So it's really a big draw to have these all-weather fields, turf fields, locally. And this slide was actually presented by the economic development folks, and they mentioned Loby Field as being turfed, and I think they misunderstood the partnership between the school district and the county, because I think they assumed that the 2 fields that got turfed there were still county fields and didn't understand that the school district now has those 2 softball and baseball fields. But definitely Gordon, that you all have understood the importance of the Gordon turfing, enough so that you're looking at turfing maybe a second one, I understand. So that really, and there's always, I drive by there every day, and it's always used. There's always somebody on it. Other larger regional facilities that you see here, Starfire Sports Complex, anybody heard of that one in Tukwila? Also Magnuson Park, a little bit further away. Is that my eyes, or is that a little out of focus?
I thought it was me.
I think it's me. Semmel has just turfed their softball fields. That's the one in Gig Harbor. Really popular place there as well. So turfing 2 fields at Pendergast along with the 3 ball fields would give Pendergast the additional capacity to meet local area needs. So these teams that are going down to Lacey could be local. They wouldn't have to go down to Lacey. And you can see by the map on the left here, there's the 90-minute drive, the 60-minute drive, and the 30-minute drive. Most of those complexes are at least 30 to 60 minutes out. Some of them are 90. So our goal with this is to keep people local, have them spend their money local, and provide these types of high-quality athletic facilities for our residents in Kitsap County and Bremerton. So some of the effects of these improvements, additional events that could be held. You see that 86 additional events could be held on the ball fields. We use our ball fields for softball, youth baseball, special events. We have a very large Pacific Islander Festival that was held there last year with about 1,000 people. So we try to use our facilities as much as possible for anything that we can. We have a grass volleyball tournament that we run on the ball fields in the summer. So they get a lot of use. But if it's raining and they're soggy, they don't get a lot of use. You see 120 events at the soccer fields. We do more than just soccer on our fields. We do rugby, we do lacrosse, we do ultimate frisbee, flag football. We even had a cancer awareness walk where people came out and tended out onto the fields. So altogether, this represents about 11,000 additional visits per year. And when you talk about additional visits, that's one person coming one time. It doesn't necessarily mean, because some of these folks will come once a week for 6 weeks. So it's multiple visits. These are
Was there an estimate of multi-day visits, multi-day events in that calculation?
Yeah, we put some, part of the analysis was what kind of concerts and special events that you could go, and that kind of went in the other column. Yeah. And that number can vary too, depending on what it is. We had a group that wanted to do a bluegrass festival up there, and that could be 1,000 people a day. I mentioned the overnight cancer walk. They spent the night up there basically, and there's about 500 people in that 2-day event. So here's some excerpts again from the economic impact analysis. This talks about total estimate change in consumer spending per year, and this meant a lot to me because it shows all the different elements that you factor in when you look at spending. Things like lodging, meals, entertainment, shopping, gas, other. And what Burke does is they look at a high scenario and a low scenario to give you a range. So you're not looking at one number, you're looking at a range. And as you can see from this, the range that they give is anywhere between roughly $1 million to $1.7 million of additional consumer spending if these improvements were made. This one here is yearly economic impact from the increased consumer spending. And these elements that they look at here are direct effect, meaning money that you generate from people using the facility. Indirect effect, I'm bringing a team in, but I'm also spending money for a concession, but it's not related. You know, I'm here to spend money, but it's not on the sport event. I'm just here to spend money. And then the induced effect is more like lodging tax and or lodging funds and things like that, where it's just an ancillary thing. I'm staying in town, so I'm going to spend money at a hotel, but it's not directly to the athletic event itself. So these numbers are interesting as well. Total value, again, a range from 1 to 1.8 million. The other interesting thing on this slide is the employment numbers, which are really important because we're providing additional FTE employment to people in the community. And those numbers range from 11 to 19 additional FTE years. And that's based on a 2080 work per year, hours worked per year.
Is that in your budget, Mayor?
Oh, yes.
No, this is actually not employee, this is all impact. It's not, that's McDonald's people, that's hotel people, that's everything. And it does include some city staff to manage the place and maintain it. But the bigger number, as you see, the direct effect is a pretty high number, so there's a good number there, but there's also numbers affected by indirect and induced.
And so, Mike, though, to answer your question, this is just based on marketing from the Parks Department with, you know, Jeff and one other person devoted full time. This doesn't count the marketing budget that I would put in our budget that would actually market this facility, and also how it would fit into a bigger system of soccer fields in Kitsap County, where we would contribute to a bigger effort to make us a traction for large tournaments that would include Silverdale and the Paulsville fields.
Yeah, I'm happy to see that there's the atmosphere of cooperation, because Central Kitsap has just put 3 or 4 more turfed soccer fields into play, 2 more baseball fields into play that are turfed, and others. North Kitsap has added fields. South, I'm not sure what South has done, but
Yeah, absolutely. It's the multiplier effect of, this analysis was done in isolation. So if we were to talk about partnerships and intentional marketing and you know, combining our efforts with our other county partners and city partners, we have the opportunity to do something big here in this county. And we do have local talent here that would be wonderful to actually provide it here locally rather than have exporting them out into the other parts of the region. So, Jeff.
yeah, the major obstacle is overcoming the fact that they're all in different stovepipes. School districts, cities, so on, coordinating all of that to do a large tournament's a difficult process.
Yeah, when we, to speak to that, speak to the mayor's partnership approach, we've always worked that way because we've had to. We've been limited on facilities and resources, so the only way we can do big grand things is to share our responsibilities with other people in the county. I will say, from a parks perspective, that there's a distinct difference between a community recreation facility and a school district facility. And the difference is priority goes to the school district. And we understand that. I coached baseball for 25 years and I know how important those fields are for those kids to use. But then again, the school district has to keep them for the district purposes. So that coordination is difficult with different agencies, but it's the only way we can survive around this area because we don't have a Starfire, we don't have a Semmel, we don't have a Marimore Park that's got 11 soccer fields. We don't have that. So our best option is to have each agency kind of work together. And it's only a 10-minute drive from, you could head up the hill and be to Silverdale from Bremerton in 15 minutes. That's not unusual tour. I mean, that for a soccer team to travel that much, they're probably loving that.
And then if you're talking, this is a regional draw, and so the dollars, it would be up to Bremerton to compete for those sales tax dollars. It's open. I mean, if you're coming here for a weekend or even a week-long tournament for one of your kids for rugby, lacrosse, or soccer during the summer, then Silverdale, Paulsville, Port Orchard, they're all going to be destinations for somebody who's coming up here maybe for only once or twice a year just for a brief stay. So my intent was, okay, here's your opportunity for our folks. Now it's time to compete because we want those sales tax dollars obviously in Bremerton, but that's not a given. So.
And it's got to be a combined effort because Bremerton alone doesn't have the resources. The county maybe doesn't, the school districts don't, but combined, we could do a lot of great stuff. We really could. And lastly, the impact, which really kind of opened my eyes, was the impact of construction. And there's some assumptions made here that I think are important to speak to. That's a pretty big number. Potential output of $17 million for roughly a $12.6 million project. The theory is though that some of that spending will not be local spending because you can outsource stuff from other areas. So if you buy your turf from a different place out of the area, then some of that spending won't happen locally. But our focus with our projects is to hire local folks, get local contractors, get local suppliers, and spend that money, have that money be spent locally so that it gets back into the local economy. So here it lists employment, pretty staggering number, 311 FTE years, and then that 17 million output is a pretty strong number. But really, the key is that it equates to about $1.38 spent of economic activity spent for every dollar spent. Excuse me. So $1.38 of economic activity for every $1 spent. So that's how that number comes up. So I think on the bottom it just notes that the nature of impact will depend on how the project is sourced, whether you buy local or somewhere outside of the local area. And then employment effects would be dependent on how it was phased in. Because you wouldn't do the whole project at once. If you did phases, it would change the FTE numbers. Another important element that we always use in our projects in the city is community outreach and involvement. It's critical for us to get our consumers on board right away. The old adage, if you build it, they will come, sometimes works, but not always. We've got to make sure that this is what they want, and we've got to make sure that they'll support it when it's built. One of the things we do is do a lot of public meetings. We meet with our stakeholders. We meet with our user groups. And we've done that successfully for the past 10 years at least. and have developed at least close to $10 million worth of projects with about $500,000 or $600,000 of city money. And that's all through granting and community support. And they don't only support us by using our facilities, they actually give us money in the beginning and donate to help support the matches that are required from a lot of these grants. Manette Park, I'll mention briefly, we just completed. It was a $1.6 million project. We were awarded a youth athletic field grant for $250,000, a local park grant for $500,000, both from RCO, and the community matched $100,000. That's huge. That's very substantial for a small community of Manette. So we think a regional facility that touches a ton of people will really be supported strongly. So I just list some stakeholders and potential partners here. The Parks and Recreation Commission. We have a Bremerton Parks Foundation that we get funding from. Olympic Sports Center, which is now Olympic Peninsula Sports Center. Area youth sports clubs. Bremerton Soccer has I know, Mayor, you talked to one of their board members, and they're extremely excited about this potential. Sports leagues, tournaments, dog park users, program participants, and just community members at large. So good cross-section of support.
So why did they change the name to the Olympic Peninsula Sports?
I'm sorry, you'd have to ask them. I really don't know.
I'm sorry, what is that? That's the building that's out there, isn't it?
Yes, correct.
Olympic Sports.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
So just a brief review, project timeline. Again, this was done a little earlier, so that please disregard the March 11th. I think the snow kind of took care of that one for us. So we apply for grants on a cycle. So the Washington State Recreation Conservation Office, call it RCO. The grant cycle for youth athletic facilities is 2020. That grant just went up $100,000, so it was $250, now it's $350. The local park grant is $500,000. We look to begin raising funds soon. Never too early to start that process. Additional grants and funding applications. We were able to piece together a lot of different grants and funding sources for many of our projects. Another project fairly recently, was Kiwanis Park, that started with a $40,000 community development block grant, of all things. It's a HUD grant that we got from the federal government, and it turned into $800,000 project because the local church, Star of the Sea Church, that's right next to that, kicked in $400,000. So you start with a little bit, and it just builds and builds and builds. Additional grants and funds. A&E design, looking to do that. Most of that stuff we actually can do in-house. We have a registered landscape architect, a program management team. We can get most things up to about 30% complete, drawings and everything. So that saves us a ton of money in the front end with A&E. We don't do geological, we don't do things like that, but remember, all these things are all planed out and ready to go. We just got to scrape a little dirt off and lay a carpet down. We're not doing any heavy grading. We don't have to do final slopes. They're all done. It's already got the curbs there. We just got to peel the dirt back and lay the grass down.
That's if the drainage system works.
Yeah, drainage is going to be important. The existing drainage isn't the greatest, so once we dig that up, we'll evaluate it and make improvements if we need to. Prepare bid documents. Again, we do that a lot of times in-house. We'll certainly work with A&E and contract management folks to help that be smooth. Another part of that is all the permitting process. And then we put project out to bid award, hopefully in 2022. We kind of try to time our bids at a certain time of the year before the contractors are all set up with their work, because your bid's a lot better that way. If you wait till they have work lined up, then you get a bad number. And we've learned that from the past. Construction hopefully would begin towards the end of 2022. Again, with these types of facilities, you have a little bit of a window with the weather that you can and cannot work in. So we have to work around that. And our hope would be to complete the project in 2022 to 2023. So finally, I just want to reemphasize that, the facility is already there. The city owns the property outright. We have no debt service on this property at all. We own the land, we own the lighting system. All the improvements have been paid for completely. So we're $0 on the debt service. Infrastructure is in place, which is a huge cost and time. All the fields are lit. Both of the dirt soccer fields are completely lit. All the ball fields in the parking lot are lit. They all operate off of a computer-controlled Musco system. I can turn them on and off with my smartphone. If I could figure out how to use my smartphone, I could do it. But our athletic coordinator can just set schedule and turn them on, turn them off. So they're very energy efficient. We have a parking. What other facilities can you come into that you have 470 parking stalls already there?
Yeah.
That's pretty rare. And then, as we mentioned, the all-weather fields already have all the concrete curbing. We would need to look at drainage and make improvements, but it's essentially shovel-ready. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Do we need a microphone?
Yes, we have one right here. Okay, good.
You could just leave the mic sliding there, we shouldn't need to read just fine.
Okay.
No, the Burke report that came in, can we get a copy of that?
Absolutely.
These are notes that I took from reading it, so I'm not sure where, but it was mentioned city cash a couple times. What is city cash?
So any grants that we get, like RCO grants, require match, and they vary with the area that you get them from. Most of them are 50% match. Now you can use one grant to match another. So for example, in the RCO grant categories, if you do a local parks grant, a portion of that grant could be used to match the $350,000 youth athletic facility grant, but they require a 50-50 match. And I think the district, you're looking at a 70-30 match, something like that, I think Mr. Walton expressed. But you're looking for some skin in the game from the agency.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we use. We call it city cash, but it can be a combination of real estate excise tax. It could be from our capital fund. It could be force account labor, lodging, whatever we can garner. These projects, we call it weaving these projects, because we have to get all these things lined up and have them go together for one big project.
What's the museum? What's it Pendergast?
It's it's the ASA, which is Amateur Softball Association, which at one point was the association in the United States for amateur softball. Back in the day, and it's called the Kitsap County Amateur Softball Association Museum, and it's got artifacts and trophies and stuff from back when softball was king in Bremerton. There were traveling teams in Bremerton. My predecessor, Jim Spencer, was a big, you may have heard of Pops In, fast pitch. Played fast pitch all across the nation. They were national champions many years. So softball's really huge in the Bremerton community.
And then with not being artificial turf, what months are you able to fully use the fields now?
We try to use the sand fields as much as the weather will allow us. So because the soccer and rugby seasons are kind of off from the summer season, they want to be in there in the late fall, and that's when conditions just get really bad. And it's not just the wetness of the surface, it's the unevenness of the sand, it's the softness of the sand. Coaches complain to us all the time because their soccer balls get worn out when the kids play with them. They wear out. It's like throwing it across a piece of sandpaper. So from that perspective, the playability is limited to just the less wet months, and around here there's not too many of those.
And I noticed when you updated these that there was a bunch of pendings in the original printout that you pulled pending out. So there was a thing about letters of support pending. So are they
Still pending.
Still
We've
pending.
got many outreach. As I mentioned, we got the mayor actually did his handshaking with some of the board members, and he's got
Oh, yeah.
board members online.
Yeah.
We've talked with several of the Bremerton soccer folks who typically use our fields. We've got multiple, the rugby crew. We talked to them. They're traveling to Seattle on weekends just to play, because nobody wants to come over here to play. So they all have to travel. Lacrosse has shown great interest. They don't currently have a program on our field. They just practice occasionally, but they're showing great interest in having play. My athletic coordinator's working on a flag football group. So all these people are coming out of the woodwork when I think it was the initial Kitsap Sun article that said that we were really hoping to present this to the board, and people are going, well, yeah, I would use that, and here's my group. So there's a lot of people out there that would.
They're ready to go.
That's a great-
These RCO grants are competitive.
Very much so.
So how do you rate your chances of successfully
With
competing?
with the Kitsap Public Facilities District money, very high. We've just finished our Manette Playfield project. We ranked 5th out of 70 on our first grant and 9th out of 30 on our youth athletic field grant. We've got another project at Warren Avenue Field, Playfield, which is an old-time playfield in the middle of Bremerton. We're currently ranked 2nd on one of the grant agencies and then 5th in another grant, and that's a $850,000 grant. And then we just found out possibly that there's some other funds coming in. So we typically rank extremely high in grants. We've been very fortunate and have done, I can count 5 major projects in the last 8 years that have all been funded significantly through these grants. And we mix and match them. We've got another one at Kitsap Lake where we're working on the fishing docks. That's an ALEA grant, aquatic land enhancement. And then tomorrow I get to go to Olympia and present for another RCO grant, boating facilities for Kitsap Lake dock and boat launch. And that one's about a $483,000 grant. Our initial ranking for the ALEA grant was, again, very high in the top 10. And they typically fund 30%, 40% of the applications. The one we went against for the Kitsap Lake, there were 91 applicants, and we were in the top 10.
This project makes our legislative task list. So I just came back from Olympia, and the budgets are not final, but this one has made it into the House budget for 50 grand. I spoke with the senators, and they would like to beef that up, with their proposal. So it's an example, though, of where we get money. It's not only through the traditional grant process, but it's through individual legislators and making it a priority. And this is a combined mayor-council effort. So we work together to create this legislative ask.
So you have potentially $850,000 in grants,
Potentially.
and the city has to somehow find a way to match that
Correct.
normally.
We have earmarked some REIT money in the out years. I think it's $800,000 in 2020. That's all predicated on council approval and so forth, and what the REIT fund is.
So
Real
in theory,
estate
that's,
exit.
$1,700,000
Mm-hmm.
to go against that 5.8.
Correct.
So that kind of takes the PFD bill down to $4 million.
That's correct. I like your math.
Now, do these, but that's only phase 1.
Yes, sir.
So do these things come up again every 2 or 3 years?
It's a 2-year cycle.
Presumably, if you ever got to phase 2.
Correct.
You could apply again for some of these grants.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Olympic Sports Center,
Mhm.
they have the building, you own the land.
That's correct.
How long is that agreement for?
Well, they currently they're in. Let me see if I can explain this. The original owner operator who built the property or built the building on the property, had a concession agreement with the city, and that was an extended concession. I believe it started at like 15 years. The new operator is actually on a sub-concession currently. So he's a new owner who came in and essentially was trying to buy the business from the original owner. And he's on a year-to-year basis at this point. His biggest concern is he can't get funding to buy the building from the guy outright. So he's still on a year-to-year sub-concession. But it's a typical, we try to do these concessions a little bit longer term because they're putting an investment in, and if they can't have it long enough to get their investment back, it doesn't pencil out for them very well.
I was also going to ask, on the front cover, you say complete Pendergast Regional Park is promised to the citizens from a park survey in 2013.
Correct.
Who made that promise to the citizens?
Somebody before I did. What I can tell you is when the original concept and master plan was put together, as you saw in that one sheet that shows the 6 fields. Can't bring it up here real quick. Anyway, the concept was to have 6 complete fields. So all the softball players rallied around that. Hey, 6-field complex, it's going to be the talk of the West Coast. And then the bids came in. And the fundraising was going great guns. And then the construction started. And it was about a 3 or 4 year project from what I can recall from the files that I've read. And you add 3-4 years on to a construction at about 3 to 5% markup. And so their scope just got reduced a great deal because the original budget was for 6. Now they could only afford to build 3.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what happened. And there are some longtime supporters. How many remember Ace Paving?
Oh, yeah.
Christofferson's.
Yes.
They did all the grading and grubbing at that site, and it's like hard pan down 6 inches. They had to blast in certain areas to get the grading down. They donated all their grading and grubbing. So that's, $300,000-$400,000, and their fields are named after them. Those are the kind of guys that sat and did fire watch at night for free, watching the stump piles burn back when you could do that. So those are the people that are saying, well, we had this vision of 6 fields. You need to finish that vision for the community. But the money hasn't been there, so we're looking for help.
Thank you.
I just have one quick question.
Yes, sir.
So, on the parking lot, some of the other pictures, the paving looks bad, and you said it was beyond chip seal. How did it get so bad? You guys maintain that, right?
Money.
So are you able to have
Asphalt
enough money
around here doesn't last real well. So it should have been sealed. Well, let's see, 95. So how many years old is that to here? That's 25, almost 24 years. And it should have been maintained
Now,
better.
and the parking lot was built for a state-of-the-art, full-purpose, year-round sports complex. So we have a state-of-the-art parking lot, state-of-the-art lights, and the fields in the system that only supports part-time. So we have a lot of infrastructure in place. It's in decent shape, but not the activity that would support that type of infrastructure. It truly is an uncompleted project. We're close. There's $5 million in equity in this project. But without the extra effort and the cash we're going to put into it, it doesn't generate the return and the revenue, flow to actually maintain the system, to maintain the entire system. So we do have I won't say a world class, it's getting a little bit out there, but that parking lot is something else. I mean, a 470 stall lot. I mean, we can really handle a lot of activity out there.
And let me add that we budgeted for overlay, hoping that we could get by with a chip seal, but we wanted to put the worst case scenario out there. So there's areas that are alligator, there's areas that are spalling, there's some moisture cracking going on. We've gotten a couple of asphalt contractors come out, and half of them say, I'll chip seal it for you. The other half say, well, you need to replace the whole thing. So when we get down to bids, then we'll bid it and we'll have the scope defined.
Right, so have you had trouble getting money to maintain all the fields out there? I noticed the concession stand looks like it's got some problems there too.
Just the facility, that's an old LP siding issue. I don't know if you recall several years ago with LP siding, how the moisture problems started to happen. And so that's what's going on there. We just need to replace that siding. You know, the priorities, I've been in the director's seat for about 2.5 years now. And the priorities prior to were build more parks, you know, get more facilities going. And we're really have come full circle and started looking at maintaining our existing parks. I have to say the administration has changed over time as well, and I'll let Mayor Wheeler speak to that.
I've had made our park system a priority. You know, and you know, good parks, I think we all agree, create revenue. They do create economic activity. My main motivation, though, is I think parks are the great equalizer. I think it's that place, one of those few places where you can bring people in from all different walks of life, and they get a chance to do something together as a group or individually that they can't do anywhere else. And that's why we felt it was important for a parks department to run this type of operation, to not only make money, but to also give all socioeconomic classes a chance. And I'm from Bremerton. I played on the fields and I played the sports. And fortunately, we had the facilities for somebody like me. But if we want to expand into different arenas like soccer, we're going to have to invest. And if we want to produce those athletes like Marvin Williams and Nathan Adrian, you have to have a park system. And you know, our community does have tremendous talent, and it doesn't. You don't have to be born into it. You know, you can work at it. You don't have to be born wealthy or rich. It's there. If we do a park system right, we create opportunity for everybody. And that's a big driver, but I can relate it into the economic environment. You know, the economic environment, it does produce revenue. You know, I am committed, and I'll commit to the Parks Department to funding an intentional promotion program where we'll go out. We will promote what we have. We'll promote it either in isolation or with our partners in the county. We will do this because I think it'll lift us all up.
Other questions?
But this project, and I'm not sure what the timing was on it, didn't make the cut on the priorities of things the city was willing to bond for.
Well, there really wasn't an opportunity to bond for it. We were kind of in the recession period of looking at bonding for our life, I guess. We saw we have a $3 million budget in Parks and Recreation now. We're employed by, we have 20 people full-time that work there. We went from a budget of before the recession, a budget that was $1.5 million to $2 million more than that, and we lost 10 people. So the recession hit parks hard because your options are police and fire, utilities, and then parks is down here. So we took significant hits, and some of the maintenance issues that are deferred because of that lack of resources. And it has to do with how council supports us. It has to do with how the administration support us. And I'm confident that the mayor really has his focus on making sure our parks stay viable. So it's a great point, and it's something we're trying to dig out of for sure.
Yeah, it's again, it's fortunately it wasn't a $17 million building that only had $5 million investment and their construction stopped. There was still some value in what we got out of the $5 million investment, but it truly is, with the full build out, with our equity already in it, and our ask of you is a $17 million project. So we've generated revenue, created outdoor activity opportunities, exercise for all walks of life. Could we do more with this investment? My gosh, yes, we could do a lot more. But Yeah, it's truly just been an unfinished project. It's bothered me that, you know, just from a distance to watch taxpayer dollars not be utilized correctly, to have an initial investment not be followed through. And I don't want to blame any past administrations why we're here. But we have, you know, circumstances, you know, things beyond everybody's control, maybe focus, but, you know, right now though, we have a committed council, myself. There's multiple revenue options for us, but we do need that big stake to kickstart, to help us with the $5 million in equity that we already do have, to go out and bring the rest of the partners in to get this completed. And then we are committed to being a regional partner on a bigger scale.
Jeff, Mayor Wheeler, thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.